Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Banana Hall. I'm the director of our Center for Teaching and Mentoring. Today is a session among our workshop series on how we better support and mentor our students as faculty and academic affairs staff. And I'm excited to introduce my colleague, Dr. Lance Alexis, who is director of, you're going to have to help me with the
ADA compliance.
ADA compliance is our office title now. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Alexis. We're going to be monitoring the Zoom room for the chat and any questions that you have as Dr. Alexis talks to us today. So welcome, Lance Alexis. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. Well, it's wonderful to be here today. So just to compound a little bit on the introduction, my title is Director of ADA Compliance. I work out of the Office of Civil Rights Compliance. And I always like to emphasize that because it sounds fancy and fun and all that good stuff. But just to really put into context that ADA compliance, along with Title IX, Title VI, are other legal compliance areas that we're familiar with through trainings and just overall education, all in line with civil rights compliance. We're looking to allow access for people of really for people, period. And so ADA compliance falls under that umbrella. So today I'm going to be talking about what are the expectations for the university and as employees of the university, faculty, staff, otherwise, as it relates to ADA compliance and accessibility. What did I just do? I know I clicked the bottom button. Shouldn't have done that. There we go. Yeah. So let's start by talking about the ADA. And I'm not talking about the American Dental Association. Just want to be very clear. I'm not going to give you any dental advice today. This is the Americans with Disabilities Act. No qualified individual with a disability shall, on the basis of disability, be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of the services, programs, or activities of a public entity or be subjected to discrimination by any public entity. So lots of fancy words that simply just mean that we need to be welcoming and open to people with disabilities in all that we do. And that's where I really want to center on for a moment, all that we do. We have to consider accessibility in everything that we're providing the campus, anything that we're providing a group of people that we're unsure of. And I'll get into a little bit of that here in a moment. So let's talk about strategy. So the way to think about this is not to think about disability, not to think about the medical side of things. That can be very daunting. And really, in the end, it is not productive to look at it that way. And the reason it's not productive is because there's so many diagnoses. There's so many different ways that diagnoses can manifest in an individual. Two people can have the same exact diagnosis and it manifests completely differently. The medical side of things is entirely too cumbersome to really conceptualize. So I always want to focus on, that's not what we're asking you to think about when we're talking about disability. What we're asking people to do is focus on what they do and how they can make what they do accessible. So first thing, don't think about medical. That's most important. So we want to focus on the barriers we can objectively identify. So what are the barriers in what we're putting out there? Now, how do we identify the barriers in what we're creating? So as I mentioned, it is the number of diagnoses that exist and that continue to only be added are numerous, beyond anything that I would expect anyone to know. I'm not gonna act like I know. And once again, we're adding more and more diagnoses, by the day. And then once again, how they manifest and how they impact people, it's too wide. So when we talk about access though, we do bore it down to three things. As far as we talk about vision, hearing, and mobility. And the reason it's those three things, I'm in no way, shape, or form am I discounting any other diagnosis or disability. But when you're talking about access, we have to be able to objectively identify barriers. And since so many other things manifest in so many different ways, there's really no objective way to put that forth from a procedural standpoint, from a structural standpoint. But with these three, we can identify that there are people who have vision impairments, there are people who have hearing impairments, and there are people with mobility impairments, and there are things, and as we provide things, it will impact these three definitively. And so since we know that, we can address it from that point. So I want to just make this big idea of disability and just bring it down to just these three primary concepts when you're thinking about access. So, and I do want to point out, there's an emphasis on digital spaces. The ADA was written in 1990. We weren't sending too many emails or anything back in 1990, I don't believe. But now we do. And now, obviously, our digital space has grown. So the ADA at its inception was primarily focused on physical space. And we see that in our everyday life now. We see larger bathroom stalls, we see curb cuts, we see elevators, we see all of these things in the physical space that we've grown rather accustomed to. The digital space, though, went, I don't want to say completely unchecked, but at least from an emphasis, it really was not emphasized for quite a while. Now, starting in April of next year, the digital space will be regulated, or the regulations have come out, I should say, that are in the digital space. And so while we have still, the digital space still fell under the ADA, there was some grace there that a lot of institutions, businesses, and higher education institutions were given, because there was no federal, for instance, in the physical space, there is a book that says that, you know, this has to be this many inches and this has to be, and all of these types of things. There was nothing like that from the federal government in the digital space. Now there is. And so with that emphasis, we're not going to be given the grace that we were in the past. So I think it's an important time to point that out too, that we really need to take this seriously from a compliance standpoint. We always needed to. There was a lot of cases where in the digital environment, institutions have lost, but it's going to be even more so now because we're not going to be given that grace, because the federal government has said this has to be done by this point, and that point is coming April of next year, or 2026, the next April. So what are we asking to do? And I love acronyms. I do. And I love this acronym because I came up with it. Me. So if you ever see anyone else use this, like, no, that's Dr. Alexis's. So the acronym is ACCESS. Isn't that a great acronym for what we're talking about? So this is what we ask you to do. Assess content. Collaborate effectively. Systematize solutions. That's the model we put forth here at MTSU. So it's a well appropriate acronym, ACCESS. So let's jump into that. What are you asked to do as an employee of MTSU to achieve ADA compliance? What we ask you to do is get into the weeds of what you do. Conduct an evaluation of all the content you offer to students, colleagues, and the community. Okay. So as you're creating this content, really think about who is meant to interact with this? Who's the intended recipient of the content? How will the content be received? So if you're putting on an event, now the three lenses we talked about, mobility, hearing, vision, those are the three lenses you're looking at things through, okay? I'm gonna add a fourth a little later, but you know, we'll worry about that here in a moment. It's kind of a overarching thing. Mobility, vision, hearing. So you're putting on an event. What's something to think of from a mobility standpoint?
Can the participants access the event?
Okay, excellent. Is the room in an accessible building? Okay. If it's an outside event, maybe what's one thing to think about?
Once they access the building, is there additional access for mobility in the space?
In space, right? Good. But if it's an outside event, if you're having something on the lawn or whatever, or the Grove, where might you want to make sure things are closer to? Might want to make sure things are closer to sidewalks and things along those lines, so that when you have the grass can be difficult. That's what, not to say everything needs to be on the sidewalk, but at least some things. So vision. So something to consider if you're putting on an event and you're inviting a speaker. You may want to ask the speaker, do you have visual aids? If they do, encourage the speaker to just, you know, be very descriptive with their visuals. Hearing. Are you live streaming the speaker? If so, what do you have to consider? Is the live stream captioned? So that participants with hearing impairments can engage with the material. Those are the lenses you have to think of, we're asking you to think through: mobility, hearing, and vision. If indeed, and if you're creating, let's get into a class. If you're creating a class, here's where it's very important. This is different. This is somewhat different, although we've tried to get this ball rolling over the past years, but I emphasize this is not to be reactive. When you're creating a course and you're going to have a video in this course, your video needs to be captioned, okay? Unless it is just a straight recitation of something on the screen or something like that, which is very rare, but if it was, it would need to be captioned. But pretty much every video has to be captioned. If you're pulling up a video from somewhere else, make sure it's captioned. Don't wait. We can't wait any longer. A person with a hearing impairment who comes into your class and says, here's my accommodation letter, or you get it electronically, I should say, and then you go, well, that video that I'm going to show tomorrow isn't captioned. What do I do? I guess they just don't get to access that material. No, we can't do that. So you don't want to wait for that accommodation letter. This has to be done while you're in the planning and the creation process. So another thing to consider, what if your video is highly visual? What if it's pictures of what if you're in admissions and you're making a recruitment video and it's beautiful stills of the campus, campus during the fall, campus during the winter, campus, whatever. And it's still after still after still after still, and you're going to put it on the website because it's so pretty and nice and it's going to draw people to MTSU. What's the problem with that?
Visually impaired, can't see those beautiful images.
Exactly. And if there's no audio accompaniment to describe what's going on, if you have a vision impairment, you click on that video, you're getting what out of it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So that's why, how will the content be received? Well, that's meant to be received visually. So what do you need to do in that situation? You need to add audio description. And we'll talk about all of these things a little bit later. Because one thing I want to say now, and I'll emphasize it again, is that we're also not expecting you to know all of these things. Okay? This model is meant to be as user-friendly as possible. This is all about you as a content creator. And as a content creator, let me step back. I've yet to meet the content creator who goes, ooh, I sure hope less people interact with what I do. Every content creator wants more people to interact with what they do, and that's what we're doing here at its core. We are asking you, and we are respecting you as content creators, and we want more people to be part of what you do. And we achieve ADA compliance, so it's a win-win. So once again, who is the intended recipient? I do want to focus on that for a moment. The big thing with that is, if you know precisely, so I want to be fair, I want to give as much information as possible. If you know precisely who you're working with, and you know they don't have access needs, you don't have to consider accessibility actually. But that's very rare, that you will know exactly so if you're putting something out there on the website, obviously it's for the world to see. But even if you're creating a class, you don't know who's going to be in your class. It's very rare that you're ever going to know exactly. So anytime any recipient is unknown, you have to think about access because you never know who might come up. Once again, kind of planning an event. Is your stage, does you have a ramp for your stage? Where are your things located? As far as the event, is it an accessible room? Has the speaker been instructed? Are you going to be video recording this? Are you then going to post that video? What about your social media? Just all of those things. As you're planning all that out, all we're asking is that you ask yourself the question, is it accessible? Have I followed up? When you're purchasing items, have you talked to the vendor, especially softwares? Is your product accessible? And we have on our website, once again, I'll get into some of the resources we have a little bit later to help with all of this. But that's all we're asking, is that you just simply ask the question and look at it through these lenses, ask some questions, reach out. But the big thing is get into the weeds. Everything you do, you're making these plans, you're creating these courses, you're creating these events, you're creating these videos, it's all wonderful. We want it to reach more people, and we want it to be, and in doing that, it'll be compliant. So the intended recipients, once again, I already touched on this, offerings that will be used by people whose access needs are unknown or may be transferred to others in the future. Access must be considered. Purchasing or creating offerings for one person or a small group of people that have no known access needs and are expected to be used by no one else, access would not need to be considered. So that's another thing to address. If you're gonna use it one time, and it's for one group, and I know for a fact it's these 3 people, and that no number have access needs, I don't have to consider it. But even if it's these 3 people, but I might use it later on and on and on, or I'm gonna archive it somewhere so anyone else can access it, access has to be considered. So once again, very rare that you're not gonna have to consider it, but I always want to give a full, a full offering of what is the possibility. So there are some times, but extremely rare that you would not need to consider access. So, things can that do? Yes. Okay. Examples of content receipt considerations. The offering is meant to be heard. It's meant to be heard. It's a panel presentation. You know, here's some things you might want to consider. Live captioning, post-production captioning, sign language interpreting, transcripts. These are the things you want to think about if it's meant to be heard. I do want to point out one thing because it is kind of a, I don't know, what's the right word? Something that sort of bugs me, a pet peeve of mine. And if you do this, it's my own pet peeve. I fully admit that you don't have to say what the speaker is wearing. You don't have to do that level of, I do want to point that out. And the reason being is that it's not important information. So don't ever feel like, and we'll talk about audio description here in a moment. But if, you know, what I'm wearing today, thankfully, because I'm not one to dress very fancy, is not important. What I'm saying, I hope, is somewhat important. And so keep that in mind. You don't have to address every visual. You have to address the things that are pertinent. A good example of that is alternate text. If you're not familiar with alternate text, it's anytime you put a picture on a website, for instance, or in your call, you want to have some sort of caption to that picture, or there's a way to do a behind the scenes, if you will, description of that alternate text so it's not seen. You don't have to actually tag descriptive pictures. If it's just a pretty picture, you don't have to tag it. You just have to tag the things that are actually of real, meaningful importance. So that's a pet peeve of mine, since they'll announce it and I'm over going, all you're doing is wasting time. Come on, we only have an hour presentation. Let's go. So I just want to let them know that is a pet peeve of mine. It really is the important stuff that we're talking about. So the offer is meant to be heard. It's a panel presentation. It's me speaking today, live captioning if you're having a live stream, post-production caption if you're going to put it up, sign language interpreting, transcripts. You know, those are things to consider. Doesn't mean you have to have all those things. We'll talk about accommodation here in a little bit, but things to consider and things you have to think about. The offering is meant to be seen. Talked about making that video of stills and all that. Perhaps you've seen the video, they have it every year, of the MTSU year in review. That is nothing but still picture after still picture after still picture. That really needs to be audio described. They don't have an audio described version, but they do give a visual transcript. So that's good. So the offering is meant to be seen. So live or post-production audio description of some kind. The offering is meant to be physically used, displayed in an appropriate height, displayed in an appropriate area, in an appropriate building, making sure that it's accessible. Once again, hearing, vision, mobility. Those are the primary lenses we're asking people to look through. Oh, come on. What did I do? Okay, so that's the assessed content of our access model. Now collaborate effectively. And once again, the idea is that you are not being asked to know all of this stuff. You're not, that's what I'm here for. And I'm glad to be here and I want to continue to be here. So definitely not going to ask you to tell everybody to know all of this. So MTSU has put resources in place to assist. So you do not have to know this. All we're asking is that when you think about what you're doing, asking yourself, how is this meant to be put out there? How is this meant to be taken in? There's myself, Lance Alexis, in Civil Rights Compliance. We have the Center for Technologies and Training, the Center for Educational Media, Procurement and Logistics Services, the Disability and Access Center. So all of these entities are here and have been trained on accessibility in some form or fashion. Procurement, like I said, don't forget about the things that you purchase. especially when you purchase softwares that are going to be used. Don't forget about your employees. Your employees, you never know who you're going to employ tomorrow. So if you're going to put in some sort of new system with your employees, make sure that that's accessible as well. Now I want to take a moment to talk about IRA and Verbit. So IRA is something we've provided to the campus. It is live audio description. And so anyone who has need can download the IRA app onto their phone, and then they will be connected with an audio description expert. I had the privilege to take a weekend course on audio description up in Louisville, Kentucky, the Center for the Arts. And audio description I have developed such a great appreciation for it. It is an absolute art form. And so it's one of those things that I'm really, so there are free versions, such as there's a app that's been around for a while called Be My Eyes, and people can volunteer to be part of that. And that's fantastic. So if someone needs to know if their milk is expired, they can put up their phone and the person, the volunteer can say, oh yeah, the expiration date is whatever. Maybe you don't want to drink that. And that sort of thing. And that's fantastic. IRA though is like that, except the people have been trained on audio description. So they can describe vividly anything. They can describe a play at Tucker Theater. They can describe a game, a volleyball game. They can describe anything on campus. They can also help with wayfinding and all those type of other things too. So we have worked with IRA, and we are an IRA campus. So anytime a person with a vision impairment needs any sort of assistance along those lines, they have it at their fingertips. And so that is available to them. Students actually also, while they're MTSU students under our contract, can use IRA at home as well. And so they get free access to IRA while they're MTSU students, not just on campus, but off as well. But any faculty, staff, visitor, student, while they're on campus, can use IRA and get professional audio description at their fingertips in any live situation. Verbit. We have contracted with a company called Verbit so that we can caption materials. So over the years, as I've given presentations similar to this, the one common refrain has been, who's paying for it? Common refrain. Well, and you know what? I didn't necessarily have an answer for that. And so I said, that's a gregreat question. I don't know who's paying for it. I just tell you, you got to do it. Well, we're paying for it now. So Verbit, we do have is unlimited live caption. So if you have any live events, live stream, and you're interested in having that live caption, which you need to be interested in having that live caption, just know that that is a solution available to you. And we have unlimited, and then we also have not unlimited, but a lot. I forget how many thousands of minutes in our contract of post-production captioning as well. So if you need anything captioned before you put it on a website, before you include it in your class, or whatever the case might be, the university's got you. Just let me know, and we can use what we already have, and we can get your materials captioned for you. And then because we also caption live events. We also have we're also willing to cover. I don't have a vendor for this exactly, but we have ways of doing it. Audio description. Be quite honest, audio description, the need to audio describe is relatively rare. Much captioning is ubiquitous. Captioning is pretty much, there's almost everything needs to be captioned. Unless there was just no audio accompaniment, or once again, it was a straight recitation of something being read on the screen, it would need to be captioned. Audio description is very rare. Like I said, it has to be something that there really is. Audio accompaniment just doesn't do it justice. Something like that MTSU year in review. And we do have a few things like that. So it's very rare, but we also have ways to address that too. So we would, once again, please reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to help. Also, Center for Educational Media has done some wonderful things with captioning for us too. So we have so many different areas to look at. The Disability Access Center, I mean, just wonderful people. They presented last week here. So please reach out. All people in these areas have been trained, are aware of the needs as far as structurally as it relates to what we need to do to maintain compliance. Like I said, in procurement and logistics, for instance, We have a person in the Center for Technology and Training who is an access specialist to help faculty in creating their classes more accessibly. MTSU has gone through a lot of effort, and I give this university a lot of credit. Matter of fact, someone should be very proud of it. I can say I don't want to act like, okay, you know what, I'm going to have my moment. We should be very proud of ourselves and how we have really emphasized accessibility, especially in this state. But I would say even some of the things I've seen nationwide, we really should be very proud of ourselves.
Swipe.
Okay. So the last S and S is systematize your solutions. And what does that mean? It means now that you know, just make it part of what you do. Okay. Once you know, just make it part of your, and it, once again, doesn't mean you have to know, just know who to call. That's great. So now the next time you put on an event, you create your class, you're creating a video. Once again, whatever you're putting out there for consumption, are you asking yourself the questions? Are you reaching out to the right people? Are you, and make it part of your habit, make it part of your system. And if you do learn how to do some of those things, hey, if you want to do it, that's great. For instance, YouTube does captioning. It's not bad. It's not bad at all, but you will need to do some editing. But that's going to happen even with Verbit. To be quite honest, it's not perfect. It's always important that you edit it before you send it out, but Verbit's going to get pretty darn close. But still, you always want to edit it and make any changes to it. And you have the opportunity to do that. So make accessibility consideration part of your planning process. And most importantly, don't feel that this is not meant to be overwhelming. I can't emphasize that enough. That's why I said we focus on barriers, we focus on your content. I'm not going to talk to you about disability or medical or any of that. It's not, we want to stay in our lane, we want to stay in our comfort zone. It can seem somewhat overwhelming, especially if you have a backlog of classes that you've taught, throughout the years, or you have a backlog of videos that you already currently have maybe on your website, and you're concerned, well, we got all these videos and they're not captioned. Oh my gosh. It's okay. It's okay. Focus on new content. Okay. Get this as part of your system, get it rolling. And as time permits, and I know we're all busy, but there are pockets of time. As time permits, retrofit. That's what we're asking. The most important thing is to get the new stuff out there and get it part of your process, get it part of your system, and feel good about that going forward. And then, as I mentioned, retrofit as possible. Let's see the next slide is real quick. Okay. So I said I would talk about accommodation. So accommodation is part of access. I want to be very clear. And the reason I know it might seem odd, like why is he pointing that out? I've actually seen many presentations throughout my career where it's access versus accommodation. I never understood that. I understood it in principle because access is proactive, accommodation is reactive. So I was trying to emphasize that the differences between the two. I get it, but I never liked the versus, like it was separate. Accommodation is part of access. Okay, the ADA means we have to accommodate. So the idea is, as I mentioned, we're looking at it through 3 lenses. Okay, mobility, hearing, and vision. Okay, because that's what we can objectively know those barriers exist. However, are those the only 3 diagnoses in the world? Absolutely not. And even in those 3, there's going to be a spectrum. Okay, so we have to always be prepared to accommodate. Now, accommodation is individual. Okay, so an individual says, I have this need, and they meet whatever metric that is out there to meet that threshold of proving that need. Some people just need someone to tell them. But for instance, I do employee accommodations. I do require documentation and that sort of thing. It just depends on what you're requesting, okay? But usually for an event, it's usually just someone calling and saying, hey, I need a sign language interpreter. But it is an individual need. So this is when we're working with people on an individual level. So the idea is to make things as accessible as possible, but then still be prepared should an individual have a need that still doesn't meet. Don't feel bad. Hey, I did everything right. This person, there's no such thing as 100% accessible. It cannot exist. We always have to be open to accommodation, and it cannot exist because there are millions of people with diagnoses that are so varied that it's impossible. So don't feel bad. There is no such way of anything ever being 100% accessible. So thank goodness accommodation exists. And so we'll handle that on on an accommodated basis. The most important thing, advertise it. So if you're putting on an event, please, 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 if there's one area that we have made so many wonderful strides, and I gave us all a big pat on the back a second ago. One area that I would love to see us be better at is just putting just a statement on our advertisements, saying accommodations available, please call, and not me, not the DAC, call whoever the organizer is. I'll tell you, and that's important because what I'm gonna get here in a moment is just having that there is so important. People know, one, practically speaking, if I need a sign language interpreter, I need to know who to call. But two, just to be frank, people with disabilities all too often have been left out. Whether, and I'm not gonna say intentionally, unintentionally. I would never say never, but I think I would have to say 99% of the situation. I don't think too many people are going, ha ha ha, I hope to leave the people with disabilities out. I don't think that happens too often, but you never know. But still, they've been so intent that unfortunately, they approach things from the mindset of it's going to be inaccessible. And so what you often see is that they don't even approach it. Because their automatic assumption is it's not going to be for me. It's going to be inaccessible. So by having that statement there, they all of a sudden go, oh, this is for me. I'm welcome. And there's a practical element too. They need to know who to call should they need something. So I mentioned sign language interpreting. I mentioned it earlier. I want to be very clear. You don't have to have sign language interpreting. Okay, there is an expense there. I don't shy away from that. I say think about it. Might you need it? Yes. So you might want to budget for it just in case. So you want to think about sign language interpreting, but you don't have to. Now, some events we actually do put it sign language interpreting automatically. Our graduation, commencement has sign language interpreting automatically. But we don't have to. We actually technically don't have to. We could just put, hey, if anybody called, then we'd have sign language interpreting. But you want to allow that opportunity. And should they call, be ready. So you might want to save a little bit in your budget just in case. And if you don't spend it, use it on something else. You know, buy some t-shirts or something. I don't know. But nevertheless, advertise. Like I said, that's one area that I'm just like, oh, I really wish we could get better at that. I'm still not seeing. Every now and again, I'll see it and I'm like, hey, but then, you know, so it's just very simple. And once again, I think it's so important to put your contact. Once again, person with a disability should have the same access, the same route as everyone else. That's the goal. That's the goal. And so if anyone else can call you about the event and any needs they have, then a person with a disability should too. And here's the thing, sometimes I get a little like a question about that and say, well, but I don't know what to tell them. Remember all the people you can collaborate with. Just take a simple, oh, I'll get back to you. Then call me, call the DAC, or, you know, whomever. Hey, I got somebody sign language interpreting. Can you tell me? We sure can. And then you can call them back and you can say, hey, we got this all arranged for you. We're good to go. So you don't have to know everything. Please put your number or your email or whatever and sort of continue that whole concept of community and that we're all invited to the same party. All right, so advertise. Once again, just one little sentence somewhere in your advertisement. It's so important. Supporting it among employees and students, interactive process. Once again, you can have some form of disclosure. It can just simply be a phone call. They make a request and you can approve. Or if it's an unreasonable request, you can deny. I want to be very clear. Some people feel, oh, it's illegal or I'm going to break the law. If it's an unreasonable request, we can deny it. Okay, just because someone has a disability doesn't give them some sort of carte blanche to just request whatever they want in the world. You know, I want special transportation. I want a limo. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do anything like that. So, so we do have to have some sort of process, but once again, it can be a very simple process. And of course, we're always here to help. All right. Now, the thing everyone loves to talk about: puppies and ponies. Puppies and ponies. Puppies and ponies. All right, so I say puppies and ponies. So this is another thing we expect. So we're moving away from content for a moment, because this is another thing that does come up. So the content part is done. Actually, I want to take a moment before I jump into puppies and ponies. Anybody have a question about our access model and what those expectations are? Are there any questions at all? So we're all going to deviate from content now.
So Dr. Alexis, you mentioned the Center for Technologies and Teaching and there being an accessibility expert there. Are you referring to Sherry Wolf?
I am.
So we want to just make sure we're capturing that name and that contact,
Thank you.
because sometimes people don't know exactly what we're talking about. And then, so my background is in the School of Music, right? So I'm thinking about this April 2026. I'm thinking, how do we be compliant in the performing arts?
Mhm.
When we have performances, which we have countless performances at this institution. You mentioned Verbit as a live captioning option.
Yep.
Is that for my Department of Theater and School of Music colleagues? Is that what we need to kind of investigate as a first step for
Live streaming things.
live captioning in conjunction with the live streaming that we're already doing
Yep.
for our events? Okay. And then you were just finishing talking about the advertising to the community. And so a phrase as simple as accommodations are available upon request.
Mhm.
Contact the event coordinator, and whoever that person
Sure.
is would suffice
I would
for
say
in our,
disability accommodations or the disability icon.
okay,
Keep in mind, you can use either one, but Tennessee does recognize the active icon, if you're not familiar with that. So we try to use that more than the passive icon, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, some sort of icon, if you want to use icon or just disability. It's funny, I want to get to the question, but it's always a funny story. I was attending a session once about disability services offices changing their names and whether we should keep disability or not. I'm an advocate for keeping the word personally, but one office said they changed their name to accommodation something, and they kept getting calls about housing. So.
of course.
And so they had to change their name again.
Sure,
So-
sure. Yeah, so then the disability active icon accommodations are available upon request.
Exactly.
Contact
Something like
event
that.
coordinator, okay.
That'd be terrific. That would be terrific.
John, any questions from the chat? We encourage our Zoom participants to also type in questions based on what Dr. Alexis is speaking about.
No questions yet.
Okay,
No
all
questions?
right.
Okay. All right, puppies and ponies. We'll move on to that. So I say puppies and ponies because service animals can only be a dog or a miniature horse. I've never seen a miniature horse in action. I so badly want to and hope to one day, but yet have not. So primarily we're talking about dogs, that they do have to be a dog. I do want to emphasize the ADA only covers service animals, okay? So that is all we have to allow as far as general access. There are things called emotional support animals, but the ADA does not recognize emotional support animals. So documentation is not required. I think it's important to point that out. So if I'll use a faculty and student relationship, or you could be staff too, your library staff working in the student union, and someone comes in with an animal. We have a no pet policy. So what do you do in that situation? Once again, even I think some faculty might think, well, I'll get a letter from the DAC that says service animal. You don't have to. Now, a lot of students will. I want to be very clear with their classes. They will they will register with the DAC and they will put some sort of ask that a statement be sent out, but they don't have to. Service animal is considered just free access unless it's a situation where it's a safety risk, active construction site, or there's some sort of contamination risk, such as maybe a kitchen or something like that. But even that, labs, for instance, labs came up, and whether a service animal made in a lab, and yes, they actually make doggy goggles and doggy lab coats, and you can put the dog in a lab coat and they can go in the lab with the student. Yes, that was one. I learned that. I thought, no, they can't go in a lab because of like, no, they make all this stuff, and I looked it up, like, they make all this stuff. Cool. So anyway, but it is access point. I think that's an important point. They don't have to document. So even if you're a faculty and you think, oh, my student, I'll get that, you may not. So just be prepared for that. So documentation is not required. If it is visibly obvious why the person needs the animal, do not question it. Visible, that's what I mean by that. You can tell the person's blind, the person's a wheelchair user, something like that. Visibly observable, pretty obvious. Don't even bother asking. When not obvious, though, there are two questions you could ask. And I want to be clear, anyone can ask. You don't have to call me, you don't have to call the police, anyone who has some sort of authority over that area, a staff member, like I said, in the library, a faculty in their classroom. Do you have a disability? Yes or no question. If the answer is yes, move on to the second. What task does the animal perform? Okay, it's a lot fancier in the law what the second question is, but we're just gonna go with simple. What task does the animal perform? Now, it does have to be a task. I do want to point that out. Now, they don't have to demonstrate the task. You can't ask them, now show me how it does it. No, but it does have to be a task. So I like to use kind of an example. Let's say a student, and the student does not have to disclose their diagnosis with you, but they will a lot of times. But you can't make them disclose it. Just once again, do you have a disability, not what it is? Okay, yes or no question. But they might say, oh yes, I have anxiety disorder and manifests in panic attacks. And by having the animal here, it makes me feel a lot better. It makes me feel calmer and safer, and I'm less likely to have a panic attack. Let me ask y'all what you think. Is that a service animal? Yes or no? They said yes to number one. Do you have a disability? Yes. What task does the animal perform? And they say, well, they say, I feel calmer, I feel safer, I'm less likely to have a panic attack. Is that a service animal? I got one nod. Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Got two yeses? What
I
do you think?
said tricky, no.
Say no.
Yeah.
No, it is. What task is the animal doing? The animal is simply just what?
Calming,
There.
yeah.
The animal does not do anything. So it is not a service animal. In that case, it would be an emotional support animal. An animal would not have to be allowed. Okay. Now, same exact situation. The student says, the animal can sense when I'm about to have a panic attack. And they can do it all sorts of ways. Their service animals are amazing. And when it senses that I'm starting to get heightened, the animal will jump and apply pressure to me. And so that I sit down and I calm myself. Service animal?
Yes.
Yes. The animal has been trained to intervene, to actually do a task. So it has to be a task. It can't just be, I feel better when the animal is with me. Okay? To answer both of those questions successfully, the animal is a service animal you want to, and you want it, and you're fine with it. No more questions asked. I do want to say, please, please, please ask the questions. Now, if you happen to get if let's use a student faculty situation in class, if you did get something from the DAC, and like I said, a lot of the times they will go ahead and do it even though they don't have to, then you don't have to ask the questions. You got the validation from the DAC. But if you didn't, or once again, you work in the library, you work in the student union or anything, please, please, please ask the questions. And the reason being, because if you don't, you're like, I don't, and people get nervous about it. I get it, because you feel like you're confronting somebody. Also, sometimes people get mad. They don't like being questioned. I will tell you this, well, once again, I can't speak for everybody, obviously. For the most part, service animal owners don't mind being asked the questions, because then they know you're actually taking this seriously. Because one thing people don't like are people who abuse the system because they just want their pet with them. And yes, that happens. Because as one thing that you can see throughout this talk about service animals is that all you have to do is lie. No documentation. Look, quick Google search, you can figure out what I have to say. I can lie. So it's unfortunate in one regard. In another regard, it's fortunate because you don't want a person to have to constantly show papers and this, that, and the other and all of that. So people usually, I guess what I'm getting at is if someone gets angry at me, that's almost a sign. That's probably not really a service animal. So anyway, ask the question, because if we don't, and indeed the animal does go forth and does bite someone, let's say, it's the kind of worst case scenario. And then when it comes, obviously the ultimate liability would still be on the handler. But when it would be like, so what was this animal doing here? You have a no pet policy on campus. I didn't want to ask any. That's not good on us. Ask the questions, okay? Once again, unless it's visibly obvious by the person. So please ask the question. Don't be reticent about that. The handler must be in control of the animal and is fully responsible for actions and care of the animal, okay? You don't have to provide the animal water. You don't have to do anything. Just ask the questions, and if it's good to go, everything is on the handler. Everything is on the handler. And a common question I'll get is, because people go, well, if a person's blind, how do they know when the animal goes to the back? None of your business. None of your business. They figured it out. They know how to take the animal outside and how to find the droppings and all that. I've gotten some fun questions about service animals over the years. None of your business. Just know you don't have to do a thing, okay? As long as the animal's properly in control. Service animals in training, I do want to point out, that is a state by state decision, not an ADA decision. Tennessee does recognize service animals in training. They have the same rights as service animals. The one difference is we can ask for trainer credentials. We cannot ask for medical documentation again. Never want to ask that yes or no question, but we can ask for credentials of the training. But same rights as everything else. ESAs, once again, are not permitted in general access spaces. I was thinking about anything else on this. Let's see what the next slide is actually. All right. So one thing I do want to say before I end and turn it over to any questions about this, as mentioned, the handler has to be entirely control the animal. And as far as how we process what it means to be in control. And the easiest thing I can say is we don't want to create a separate set of standards. I think all too often we want to create a separate set of standards, and we don't want to do that because then we're treating someone differently because they have an animal. And this sounds weird. So I fully admit what I'm about to say, it sounds weird, but please bear with me. So if indeed, let's use the library for an example. If someone was being very noisy in the library, especially on one of the quiet floors, I think, what is it, the third floor is the quiet floor, right? Or I believe, floor we're on now. Hopefully I'm being quiet enough. If someone was being very noisy, what would happen? I don't know, so I'm throwing it out there. If someone reported, hey, someone's being really noisy on the third floor, we'd probably go up and say, hey, can you please keep it down? And then if 10 minutes later, person didn't keep it down. I mean, I'm not gonna act like I know what the process is, but you might go up there and say, no, seriously, you need to keep it down. Go down, and then 10 minutes later, they come, all right, you got me. I mean, I don't know how many times what the process is. If a dog is barking, what should you do? Ask them the animal doesn't need to be barking. Go sit back down. Then maybe the third time, you gotta go. And people are nervous about that, but it's the same thing. The animal is an extension of the handler, and that's how we have to look at it. So the same rules that apply to the handler need to apply to the animal. The same behavioral expectations that we have of the handler in a space are applied to the animal as well. There is no need to create well, because it's a dog, no. It's not a dog at that moment. It is simply an extension of the handler. And we want to apply the same exact principle. So kind of similar to what I was talking about before, how none of this is meant to be overly daunting. It really is meant to, even when we're talking about the access model and your content, really is meant to just fit into what you already do. Just taking these things into consideration. Even with some of the service animal, you don't have to create a whole lot, but it's a dog, and I get it. People always come back, but it's not it's an animal. I get it. Your expectations are still going to be the same because it is simply an extension of the handler. So please keep that in mind. So you don't have to go through hoops or think about some different way or just like, but it's not a person, it's a dog. Understand? Doesn't matter. They're not a dog at that moment. They are an extension of the handler. Without that, they are an assistive technology, if you will. At that moment, without that, they could not be here. And they are a wheelchair. They are whatever else you want to envision them as. That's what they are. They are not, so once again, any expectation, any noise complaints, the handler is making that complaint. You want to follow the same exact processes. All right. So puppies and ponies, always a fun topic. Any questions about puppies and ponies from our?
Yes, there's a question in the chat. This is a question from Susan. She's saying, is it possible to get an accessibility audit? She works in the Walker Library and they conduct a number of in-person instruction. She would like to know what they can proactively do.
Sure. She can reach out to me and I'm happy to sit down with her and go through what all our concerns are. More than happy to do that.
That's about it.
That's it. Okay. Nothing on puppies and ponies. There's usually lots of questions on puppies and ponies.
She says thanks for the thumbs up.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. It's funny, of all the presentations I've ever done, and some of them I've obviously done multiple times, attendance can be hit or miss. And we all know that. Man, you give a service animal presentation, that room is filled and it's like, it's the craziest thing. People love the puppies and the ponies. It's a lot. Those have always been my just best attended. And always a part of my presentations that give, when it's part of a presentation, so it always usually gets the most questions. So I'm surprised because, but yeah, anytime I've given just one on service animals, man, that one is just, anyway, it's just the funniest thing. People love talking about animals, I guess. All right, well, that's me. Director of ADA Compliance. We are, the Office of Civil Rights Compliance is in the Cope Administration Building. We are room 116, and our number is 2185.
Great, thank you, Dr. Alexis. I just had a couple questions for you. And Zoom room, feel free to add additional questions in the chat. We still have some time for chat. Dr. Alexis, you mentioned you were asking us some questions about the service animal. And then you mentioned that the animal is an emotional support animal, not a service animal.
Mhm.
What is our institution's stance for emotional support
Sure.
animals?
Most support animals are not allowed in general, some of the spaces like the library, like student union, whatever the case might be. The ADA does not cover emotional support animals. They're covered under two other laws, and that is the Fair Housing Act and the Air Carriers Act. So obviously we're not doing commercial air, so that doesn't apply to us, but fair housing does. So they can be allowed in the dorms.
Okay.
There is a slight possibility, but I just throw this out there as just a slight possibility. Anything can be an approved accommodation through the DAC. In theory, a student can ask for anything, and it's the DAC's, one of their roles is to sort of say, I don't think that's reasonable or not. Student could request an emotional support animal in the class, and that could come to fruition. There are some places in some universities where I have seen that happen. Now, I will say in those cases, in speaking with the disability services person there, just find out, they said there was a lot of documentation, there was a lot of reasons to approve this. They made them go through. They don't like, so ultimately you don't like the idea of an untrained animal, if you will, potentially being in a class. It's just not a good partnership typically. So I will, just for the sake of total transparency, there's a chance. I don't think we've ever approved it here. In the workplace, same thing. It can be approved as a workplace accommodation. So as an individual accommodation, there is a chance because the laws allow anything to be requested. So there's a chance, but primarily you're looking at dorms, and then, like I said, in very rare instances in employment spaces, but in the general spaces, no.
Okay.
And an emotional support animal can be any animal that's legally allowed in the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
So
And then my other question, anything in the Zoom, John? My other question, you were talking about April 2026,
Mhm.
and then you advised faculty and staff to not be overwhelmed by this, start with new content first
Absolutely.
and play catch up. So you mentioned IRA and you mentioned Verbit. We know that Canvas is rolling out, and one of the reasons, my understanding is one of the reasons, many reasons that we chose Canvas as our learning management system is because of the accessibility features
Yep.
that are built in. So those are coming as well. But what can faculty and website content editors, are there other programs or apps that you might recommend that we use to help us with accessibility? Like, so for example, I know with documents, if it's a PDF, we've got accessibility checkers
absolutely.
in PDFs. Are there other tools like that faculty and staff should be made aware of as we're hopefully starting to engage more in this work?
Sure. Well, I'm going to not wait to call Sherry. She's the best person to answer these questions. Any of your staff, please call Sherry. She's not just there for faculty. But accessibility checkers, I'm working with ITD, and I'm thinking that they're going to move forward. I'm so thankful because it is one of our sort of weaker points. Is there's a web crawler to look for inaccessible content and point those things out.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that's coming because we don't have a clearinghouse for our website. Everybody who has access to the web or to the back end of the web to put things on the site can do it in these departments. So that's really important. So I'd say really think about that, what you're putting on the website. But it's good to know that ITD, if it happens, it's going to move towards a web crawler to help with that in case that someone does forget to do that. But As far as overall technology and that sort of thing, I'm gonna yield to Sherry on that one. That's her bailiwick. So,
Okay.
but so please contact her. Yeah, but absolutely, there are things built in, and there are checkers. But I'll be frank, the free checkers aren't the best. So they'll get you a little way there, but still we'll probably need to go a little further.
Okay.
And that's what I said, running a class by Sherry or anything by her would be fantastic, would be the better way to go about
Got it.
it.
Any additional questions in the chat?
No, I just put Sherry's email and number in the chat so that participants
you.
can do that, can reach out to her.
Appreciate that.
Well, I just want to thank Dr. Alexis one more time for being with us and helping us with this content. We hope that you all in the Zoom room got an enriching, informative content. I know I learned things from Lance today, so thank you. And thank you for being with us today. And we'll Zoom off.
Applause and hearts from the chat.
Ah.
I'll take it.